All right, the conversation begins right now, and thank you for staying with Citizen TV. Daybreak conversation on the state of devolution begins right now. Later on, the Council of Governors chairperson will give a State of the Nation address, but we'd like to take stock of what has happened so far. More than a decade later, has devolution worked for Kenya? That's the conversation we'd like to rope you in on at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. Let me start by introducing my guest from my farthest right. His Excellency Francis Mwangangi is here, Deputy Governor for Machakos. Asante sana for making time. His Excellency Professor Kivutha Kibwana is here with us, former Governor for Makueni. Asante sana for making time. Honorable Naomi Wako is also here with us, woman rep for Marsabit. Also, she was a former senator, so she understands the issues around devolution very much. Asante sana for making time. His Excellency Wycliffe Wangamati, former Governor for Bungoma. Asante sana for making time. And Kevin Osido, Executive Director, County Governance Watch. Thank you very much for making time. And I'll start with Osido, and of course, Kivutha Kibwana was also the first one to come in. But Kevin, almost more than a decade later, has devolution worked for Kenya?
Thank you so much, Trevor, co-panelists and viewers. In my view, devolution has worked, despite a few challenges here and there, and probably I'll enumerate about 5 challenges that I think have not areas where the Kenyan devolved governance system has not done very well. But if you were to look at the different indicators, particularly from the work that we do at County Governance Watch, which is purely watching over counties, I would say that our county governments have delivered the expectations of Kenyans, looking at it 10 years down the line, and narrowing it particularly on key service sectors that Kenyans would be largely interested in: health, education, water, agriculture for food security purposes, and infrastructure. And of course, looking at the intentions of why Kenyans asked for a devolved system of governance, to devolve or to bring power closer to the people. So you look at the ability for Kenyan citizens to make decisions around key issues, particularly on finances, which now borders on the county integrated development planning process, which really is a mechanism to allow for citizens to be the people who decide where projects are being done by county governments, where what doesn't work is purely shared within the different duty bearers or government officers. Issues around budgeting, and particularly bordering on the Public Finance Management Act and the expectation of the Constitution that citizens have room to be able to decide, even in terms of resources, what really they consider as monies which need to be put in certain sectors or areas where they feel that they are either hard-pressed or would be much more value-adding to their interests. But that said, of course, I wouldn't overemphasize the kind of innovation that we see in county governments, particularly areas where, for instance, there are services that would not be undertaken, like in Mandera, where the first cesarean section operation was actually conducted by a health facility, as opposed to initially or historically where people would have to be referred or brought back to Nairobi because of the referral hospital, and where they would have rather expected to find better services. You talk about infrastructure and roads, opening up counties, making it possible for people to be able to access markets. Even children who go to schools, who initially would want to be held their hands and they have a human chain crossing over a bridge. Today, counties have been able to put up bridges in some of those areas, and so roads are, in most counties, roads are passable. But that said, Trevor, devolution has not also done very well 10 years down the line, particularly if you look at issues around disbursement of funds from the national government to county governments. And I think that's one of the latest conversations that the Council of Governors has been having with Treasury up to about a few days, a week ago. Yeah. Issues around on-source revenue. I think that our county governments, and we have a current DG, we have 2 former governors and a senator, counties are still really grappling with on-source revenue. And I think for me that would be the bedrock of successful engagement with devolved systems, so that if counties can be able to really hit their targets, which border around 210 billion from analysis which has been done by ourselves as County Governance Watch, World Bank and other institutions that are also interested in devolution. Pending bills, which is a really present issue. We have families that are grappling over monies which counties have not been able to pay to them, because they offered services, they were contracted, and because of many reasons, they have not been able to be paid. And I think that government in, government out, including national government. We had recently the Deputy President having a conversation with Council of Governors over, again, putting in place a pending bills verification committee, and that counties need to do this against efforts that have been undertaken by the former government through President Uhuru Kenyatta. So pending bills continues to be a serious issue. Trevor, corruption in counties. I still don't understand how an MCA is elected today or a governor and tomorrow you own petrol stations, almost 4 of them in your county government. You have houses in overseas countries, and you cannot really, we know how much a governor earns, we know how much an MCA earns, and governors probably who have been beneficiaries, some of them will tell us how possible it is that from the monies you have, you can actually amass this amount of wealth, which we really cannot tell. Lastly is failure to fully devolve certain functions, particularly health. I think is a big challenge to devolution, and maybe it's one of the conversations that we can have, because I know that there was a meeting in Naivasha with the national government and COG where some of these issues were addressed, particularly on functions. But of course, let me add, because it's coming up to my head, the malperformance of certain county assemblies. So MCAs are not just able to support governors, to be able to pass progressive laws, to support functions and to support counties to deliver on their mandates.
Okay. All that you've said, then that's brilliant, because that sets the stage for all these conversations. And we have former governors here and current DG. And Wangamati, I'll start with you on this. In your assessment, has devolution worked?
Thank you very much, Trevor. Yes, I think over the last 10 years of devolution, I think devolution has worked. That's my view. And just adding to what Kevin has mentioned, I don't want to just go to what he has been talking about, but when you look over the last 10 years, just in infrastructure development, we have seen a lot happening in counties. We have also seen that over the last 10 years, we have seen economic development, economic emergence of these towns. The 47 towns, we have seen a lot of economic development over the last 10 years. As he has mentioned, so many areas, whether it's agriculture, whether it's health, whether it's roads, whether it's ECD classes, we have seen a lot of infrastructure development. Now, coming back to the challenges that Kevin has spoken about.
Let's start with one, on-source revenue. Why is this a problem?
If there's, and I agree with Kevin, if there's one area that we have done very poorly, is on-source revenue. Just to put it in perspective, Trevor, out of 47 counties, only 11, when you look at their budgets, it's more than, the on-source revenue is more than 10%. The 36 counties, when you look at their budgets, 90% is based on revenues from national government. Over the last 10 years, Trevor, counties have generated about 350 billion Kenya shillings, whereas we have received about 3.6 trillion Kenya shillings from national government. Over the last, as we speak now, counties are generating about 35 billion shillings with a potential, the way Kevin has mentioned, a potential of 210 billion Kenya shillings. That tells you that we have a fundamental problem in our own source of revenue. I think that is one area that we have done very poorly as counties, and there are a number of factors that raise that. One is that the automation of revenue collection is a problem.
Why?
I mean, I think
it's all about technology. Just pick a system that works.
I think it's just a question of the process of procuring or whatever. But I remember, Trevor, in our last time of devolution, I think when my elder brother was there as well, I was the chair of the finance committee of the Council of Governors then. And I remember with the President Uhuru Kenyatta, we'd agreed that we come up with one on-source revenue system for the entire 47 counties. And that process has started. And I think maybe that is something that we need to look at. Secondly, the biggest source of revenue should be property rights. Now, the valuation rules that we have are outdated as counties. And that is something that needs to be worked out. Thirdly, I think weak administrative structures for revenue collection in the counties. When I look back, I may say this, but when I look back, maybe Prof, you're here, and Mwangangi is here as the current DG of Machakos. maybe there's a need to look at whether we should allow national government, if it's good at collecting taxes, we should allow national government to go ahead and collect taxes for counties and then disperse back to counties.
Yeah.
Because we are struggling. 210 billion potential, we are collecting 35 billion. Over the last 10 years, we have received 3.6 trillion from national government.
Yeah.
We have only collected 350 billion. So, there's a fundamental problem.
But is it intentional? Because even
It's
a governor
not- it's
yourself,
not intentional.
people would say...
It's not intentional. I remember very well,
Yeah.
Trevor, during my time as a governor of Bungoma County, Prof. Wilbia may remember, but in 2018, 2019, 2020, I was one of the best governors in terms of revenue collection. But sometimes also politics comes in. When you push people, you know very well, and I'm sure even the national government, after this finance bill, you will see it. When you push people, you're an elected leader. So when you start pushing people, it also has a backlash on your political standing within your county. So there are issues there that we need to deal with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Honorable Wako, as a former senator yourself and your oversight in counties, first of all, in your assessment, has devolution worked?
Yes.
Yeah.
I must say that devolution has worked, and especially in those areas that have been marginalized since independence, like where I come from. It is through devolution that we were able to see what it meant to be in a government, what it meant to be in a country. Our people used to say that we are in Kenya B, but today they feel that we are part of this great country. So it is through devolution that our people have been able to see resources close to them, and devolution also has helped them to see what it means you are meant to be in power. When you elect your own government in place, because we have the national government and we have the county government, and that itself motivates the citizens. Looking for your own, electing your people so that they can, do whatever they are supposed to do at the grassroots level. That itself is enough motivation. And then if you look at the growth that has come with that, economical growth, social infrastructure, and also the citizens, participating through public participation, something that they have never known. Through devolution, they have had that opportunity of participating in budget making, in projects that are relevant to their places, and just seeing, a road being done for them, and it is their own initiative, but, financed by the county government or even the national government, a borehole or a certain school built. All that is enough motivation.
Yeah.
And I must say that it has helped. It has helped a lot, and people feel the benefit. And the huge part of it, of course, is the employment. Before we all used to look at the national government, but imagine of thousands and thousands of young people or families who are sustained through the county government, and people who have been given the opportunity to serve in the county government offices, and that has helped them even to realize their potential and giving back to the community again, because before, any educated person used to migrate to the city so that they can, get employed. But today, people, everybody looks at his or her county for employment and even for other things. So for me, employment itself, families that are being sustained through the counties, and what the county government have been able to do in the 10 years has done enough in terms of opening people's eyes. And that shows us that if we continue supporting our county government, Kenya is on the right track.
Okay.
Again, when you look at the other side of devolution, corruption.
We'll get to corruption in just a bit. Now we've picked the issue of on-source revenue first.
Yes, okay.
Why is that a problem? Having been a senator yourself, what do you think is the problem? What is missing here? Is it that the governors have just simply refused because the system works for them?
Yeah, let me say this. unless we have enough of our own sources. Creating our own wealth at the county level is the thing that can really help us to grow faster than what is happening today. But I think the former governors are here. I'm sure when you have another source of income, your mind somehow relaxes. Even when you are the breadwinner of the family, when you have a simple way of getting some income, your mind relaxes. You can only be pushed to think out of the box when you know that you have no other alternative. And I think many governors or county governments have relaxed because they know that there is this money
coming from the
15% that comes from the national government to the counties.
Okay.
Yes, sometimes it delays. Of course, I know we will come to that. Yeah. But that itself has made them to relax, which is not the right thing.
Yeah.
And we have to encourage our counties to work hard, to create their own wealth, and make sure that counties, their own revenue will be moving higher than what is happening today.
So is what then Wangamati was suggesting a better approach, that if we know that the national government is better at collecting revenue and taxes, let them come and collect from the ground. But there's also the flip side of that, where they can decide and say, Bungoma, for example, has the potential of raising this amount of money in on-source revenue, therefore we're only giving you the bridging the gap only. So if your budget is at 2 billion and you can raise 1 billion, we'll only give you 1. Whether you raise the other one on your own or not is your own problem. Potentially,
yes,
you can raise it.
Yes. Of course, the government knows the potential of every county.
Yeah.
The national government and even the Senate knows the potential of every county. But if we introduce, like what my friend here is suggesting, that the national government collects. Oh, I know Kenyans will react. Kenyans will seriously react to that and they will not accept.
Okay.
But it is better for us to introduce a simple way of bringing in that so that we say, okay, this percentage is expected and you must meet your target. If you don't, then that is deducted from your annual whatever. A simple way that, Kenyans today are reacting to so many things. The economy is bad, and the reaction, people are just waiting for something small to trigger.
Yeah.
So instead of us coming up with some harsh measures, we just introduce in a very simple way so that at least Kenyans can get...
Let me bring in Prof on this. And Prof, as to give us your assessment of whether devolution has worked, you can also delve into this issue of on-source revenue. Why has it been such a headache for counties? Okay. But first, has devolution worked in your view?
Yes. Definitely. Just, Trevor, and we thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to Kenyans. But just like my panel colleagues have said so far, in my view, devolution has worked even more than I expected it would at this particular period. Why do I say so? In other systems, it takes a long time to get a devolution system working. Because even today, like in the United States of America, there are still issues in terms of the federal government and the subnational, governments taking each other to court because of are you doing things that should be done by the other level of government. So it takes a long time to convince a central system that it should defer to governments at the regional level. And we shall remember that in 1963, the 1963 Constitution had regional governments, but they didn't last for more than a year. So there was an abortion of devolution at that time. But the fact that now we have really entrenched this system and we have functional units at all the 47 counties, and we have governments, there. That, for me, is one strong reason to believe that we are on the right path, and devolution is working, of course, with the problems that have been mentioned so far, and that others we shall discuss. But when, like in the 10 years that I was a governor, and a lot of interaction with what was happening in all the counties, the best person to determine whether devolution was working was the citizen. And citizens would say, like the health services that we are receiving, like the facilities that they are, like, the personnel. Some people didn't have doctors. They used to call nurses and clinical officers doctors. They didn't have. So there was a lot of development. Of course, there are problems, but there was a lot of reach for people to access health services. In agriculture, you began to get agro-business, agro-industries, value addition in many, of the counties. So it is factual that services that were not available from the central government before were introduced by county government. So one cannot really put a case that devolution in Kenya 10 years later is aborting or is not working very well.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to some of the real issues that make devolution not do as well as it could and as it should,
yeah.
Our president promised that one of the things that he would do when he came into office was to unbundle and transfer functions that are still being undertaken by the national government, like in health, like in agriculture. Like we have these statutory corporations which are still continuing to do functions that should be done by the county governments.
Yeah.
We have the RDAs, the regional development authorities,
yeah.
which are duplicating what counties should do. And I think that is one area where the functions as well as the resources
yeah.
Should be taken to the county governments. And actually, Parliament would have to make legislation so that you either amend or repeal, the laws that establish these state corporations as well as the RDS or the regional development authorities.
Yeah.
That would become important. I think, again, we have seen incrementally functions in health
yeah.
kind of being taken back to the national government, and this clamor
yeah.
that this should be done by the national government. But the truth of the matter is the health services that have come into being from county governments,
yeah.
it's not really like before. So that there is a problem there. The issue of delayed disbursements
yeah.
was mentioned, but one, of course, must appreciate, and Honorable Mwangangi will do this more than us, because he's a current player. But for the first time, I think, at least the disbursements from the national level up to the end of June were given this time around. Although, sometimes they come late,
yeah.
and it's not possible to make sure that the money is used, so it rolls into the next financial year. I think another serious issue is conditional grants. The national government still wants to be able to implement, money which is given to counties as conditional grants to look at special issues that need attention. And again, that would be a negative, in my view. It would be a negative situation.
Yeah.
But to talk about, before finally talking about on-source revenue, I think for me, there is one thing that has not been noticed a lot by Kenyans.
Yeah.
How the governors work in their COG. Mm-hmm. And actually, they develop a lot of consensus. There, they don't talk about, we are in the government yeah. and you're in the opposition.
Yeah.
They actually work with a lot of consensus, many issues. There's a bipartisan approach.
Yeah.
And I wish the national government was to borrow that culture because it's a very, very healthy culture. Now, the question of on-source revenue, it's a fact that counties have not been able to raise, their potential. But I think as even we interrogate that particular issue, we need to also appreciate that the Constitution is written in such a way that county governments don't have a lot of room to really raise revenue, because what local government authorities, the Kanju governments used to raise, it is what was transferred into the Constitution, so that most of the revenue raising powers are still with the national government. So that's a factor that one has to consider. But having said that, it is true, because governors are very close to the citizen. Sometimes when we used to have our finance act or finance bill, when we were discussing the finance bill, the hawkers would come there and they will say, you can't, charge a lot, and everybody would be there and say, you can't charge a lot. Some people would still say, these rates, property rates, we are not making, a lot of money and so on, even though the towns are growing. So I am not myself against what Wangamati has said, that if you feel that the national government, and in Makueni we try to get KRA to work with us, if you feel that they can help in terms of, because the Constitution allows that, for you to say, national government, do this function for me. So that is not necessarily a negative thing to do. But of course, in the first instance, it is a county which has the responsibility of raising its revenue.
Okay. Honorable Wangangi, come to you as give your assessment of this issue of devolution. Has it worked in your view, having been a member of parliament yourself in Yatta and now a deputy governor in Machakos? Has this worked? And what is the issue with on-source revenue collection?
Thank you. And before I comment on that, allow me to first appreciate you for inviting Professor Kivuta Kibwana. If viewers remember, this was the constitutional advisor to the president, then president, late President Kibaki. And the devolution started then until we got the new constitution. Actually, it's an authority to speak matters devolution, matters constitutionalism. To the question, my answer is affirmative. Yes, devolution has worked, and this country is going to be transformed through devolution. Secondly, on-source revenue. There are a number of challenges with this on-source revenue. Sometimes, like in Machakos, whatever we are collecting today, we are told we could collect 3 times that. And then somebody says, no, if you can't do this, we can bring in Kenya Revenue Authority. I don't think that is the way to go, and I urge Kenyans to drop that kind of thinking altogether. What I think as a country we need to do is to build that capacity. Devolution is here, and any country that has progressively transformed has gone decentralized way of governance, decentralized way of devolved functions and resources that goes with those functions. In Kenya, the founding government, as a good professor said, they killed the devolution. And in the last 10 years, even today, as even we sit here, you could hear the language of giving counties. There is nothing that is being given to counties. Professor will tell you, it is a constitutional requirement for any particular leadership of a country to do what they are supposed to do. Give at least, allocate at least 15% to go to devolution. And all the political players who participated in the last election committed to strengthen devolution through more allocations. I believe Kenya can easily be transformed and become what we would wish to be through devolution. Now, this own source revenue, I think there are a number of things that I've seen so far. I think issue of governance is an issue that has to be addressed if we are to achieve what we want to achieve. What I mean is there are challenges touching on where to tax sometimes, because you could face very strong lobbying groups who might not want certain areas to be touched. And as an elected leader, you have to think twice, because maybe those are people who put you to the office. Another thing is also corruption. Somehow, sometimes we might not do the right thing. Not always we do the right thing. We are tempted to do something. It is only Professor who I know has an history of even wanting to dissolve the county to resist that kind of temptation. So I think that is something that as a country we have to go around and see how to assist our bosses, our governors, to ensure they govern so well.
So are we saying that sometimes this money is actually collected, it's just not declared?
Sometimes I feel yes.
Okay.
Sometimes I think yes.
Okay.
I think yes. Then there is the issue of capacity. 10 years is not enough to build enough capacity to ensure we collect effectively. Remember, majority of the staff that were transferred to county governments were those who worked with the local authorities. Local authorities then, you know how they had been starved of money. They were not functioning so well. And we know the corruption that was there. We know the culture that was there then. Then you see it being transferred to a county government, plus some officials from national government, others from private sector. So it is not easy to at least to try and ensure you have one system that works for the people. So there are challenges. And then also issue touching on politics. Politics affects a lot of on-source revenue. What I mean politics is you could do something thinking this is good for the people. It will bring some revenue so that you can do an hospital here, you can do an ECD class there, this facility here, this infrastructure there. But somebody else, probably your competitor, probably somebody else out there could come and say no. And the incitement starts. Even the same way you are seeing with the finance bill, it is happening with our counties. When people go to funerals, you see them talking so seriously, and then you just look at the fellow and you're saying, God help. Yes.
I have to take a quick break. We're back with this in just a bit. Now we're going to tackle the elephant in the room, pending bills and corruption. We're back in just a bit. But keep your views coming at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. We are talking about devolution. Has it worked? All right? See you in just a bit.